What's going on, everybody? Jeff Holiday here, and I figured, we talk about some stuff that's pretty heavy on this channel sometimes, so let's try a lighter topic. Let's really dive in deep to something that's just not really going to be too stressful, that's not going to piss anybody off. So without further ado, let's get into the meat and potatoes of racism. If we're going to have a factual, calm discussion about this, we're going to need a couple of things first. First and foremost, we're going to need alcohol. Next, we're going to have to establish some basic rules of how we're going to talk about this, because in this video we are going to be talking about Black Lives Matter. Now, the reason why I want to make a distinction is because I believe that there's two sides to Black Lives Matter. There's Black Lives Matter, the movement, and Black Lives Matter, the sentiment. And vast majorities of people who are out there in protests or say publicly in support Black Lives Matter, that's the sentiment, not the movement. So why am I making a video on this? Well, it's interesting. Over the past week, there have been 2 black men shot by police officers, which has erupted in riots and protests all around the country. And even actually over in London, I think they did one too. And then immediately after that, in Dallas during a protest, a man who did identify as a supporter of Black Lives Matter opened fire, shot a bunch of cops, killing 5. So as you can imagine, race relations in the United States right now are pretty much shit. Pretty much shit. And it's unfortunate because we have been progressively getting worse and worse and worse. But what a lot of people don't understand is that we're getting worse and worse and worse from a place that we actually had quite a bit of racial unity. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to where we really needed to be, but we had done really, really well, and it has started to slip back. So I would like to analyze how this happened, why this happened. But what spurred me most into action is because there was a video by a YouTuber I follow named The One Janitor, and I love this guy. I really, really like his perspective on things. Now, I probably disagree with him half the time, but even when I disagree with him, I like the points that he makes, and I think he's a very awesome guy. He's got a really awesome head on his shoulders, and you guys should check him out. But he made a video called How White People Can Help.
But the privilege that white people have puts them in a unique position to say things and be more likely to have them taken seriously. But if you're paying attention, there's lots of people saying lots of shit about the black experience, and you need to listen to it. And when people share their stories with you, you need to take it serious. Find real facts and real statistics and real stories. Talk to real black people. Read books and articles written by real black people. When you find yourself involved in discussions of race, don't be timid. Speak the truth. I suggest you give your support to people that are going to improve the situation. And keep in mind, I'm not saying only support black people. There are people of all backgrounds with progressive ideas about these issues.
Now, I'm not going to get too in deep into that video. In fact, I'm pretty much not really going to touch on it hardly at all, because this is not a response video to it. His video stands on its own, and whether you agree with it or you don't, there's a certain type of context you have to understand when you're viewing it. By and large, the One Janitor's video is talking about trying to help in ways of social interactions with people. That if you're a white person and you're talking to somebody who is black, that in many ways you can try and understand the situation that they're in. Maybe the different social, political factors that are going into why they have this fear of the police right now. And if you ask me, it's kind of a justified fear if you're going based off the rhetoric in society as it is right now. The thing that's different about this is because this is the same kind of sentiment that I see all over the place in various different YouTube channels. And it's this idea that if we just understand each other, then we're going to fix this problem. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense at all. You're not going to get police to stop shooting black people by understanding black people. That doesn't work. Just as the same going and interrupting a parade.
Why did Black Lives Matter halt the Pride Parade?
The reality is we halted the Pride Parade today because Pride Toronto as an organization has been constantly pushing black folk in terms of their programming, other marginalized communities, in terms of the programming in a very far place away in order for us to celebrate our pride.
Interrupting maybe, a vigil for 49 dead people from a terrorist attack.
I was really nervous to get up here because there's a lot of white people in the crowd. And that wasn't a joke. I wish this many people came out to our racial demonstrations. and our Black Lives Matter movement.
Or just going into a school library and shutting it down so you can scream out your protests. That doesn't help. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work at all. Does anybody actually think if you go into a public place and you use a racialized chant and yell and scream that you're gonna somehow make cops stop shooting black people? Really? So let's cut the shit. Let's get right to the fucking heart of this thing. Why do we have so much racism in America? Why does it exist? And we're not gonna just deal with all racism because there's a lot of nuanced reasons for why these things happen and how they occur. We're going to specifically address why is there so much racism, apparently, towards black people? Why is there so much black people being shot by the police? Why is this happening? And to understand that, we have to understand history, because as much as Black Lives Matter protesters are going to try and scream into your head that this is all this big giant conspiracy to try and keep black people down, that's not the case. You can see where this happened. The sad truth of the matter is that a lot of black people came to this country as slaves. And then, throughout the years, whereas they might have been emancipated, they did not have equal rights. And then we had the civil rights movement, and we're trying to get rid of all of these racialized laws so that they can be on equal footing with everyone else. And they succeeded. So problem solved, right? Everything's fine, right? No, not at all. Not even fucking close. In no way was everything solved. The thing is that when you take a group that was marginalized and oppressed in a society and did not have equal rights, they tend to end up in areas clustered together because they're like-minded people trying to suffer the same struggle, and they end up being impoverished. Now, that's not to say that this is an overriding systemic force, because we have a lot of rich black people. I mean, not as much as we have rich white people, but we have a lot of rich black people, famous black people. We have a black president for the first time in history. So there are ways that black people can achieve. But when we're talking about by the vast majority of people do not automatically achieve into these massive 1% scale metrics. That's not how it works. But there are more white people at the top than there are black people. Why? History. Simple as that. Nothing about getting rid of racist laws and establishing equal laws for everyone magically makes it so poor black people aren't poor anymore. That's not how it works. So let's look at some really basic statistics here. While the poverty rate for the population as a whole is 14.8%, the rate varies greatly by race. Blacks have the highest poverty rate at 26.2%, non-Hispanic whites the lowest at 10.1%. So what that basically means is if you're in America and you're black, you have a 150% chance more likelihood that you will be poor as compared to a white person. Well, that's racist! No, not really. Because when you get down to true equality, whatever we can get close to that and whatever the fuck equality is supposed to mean these days, you have to go from an equal playing field. You have to have the same opportunities for everybody. Now, the problem with that is that if you have the same opportunities for everybody, whether that's true or not, which I do believe for the most part it is, then you have to have the same basic amount of resources unilaterally across all races for them to have a similar rate of poverty. So the basic summation is this: there are more poor black neighborhoods than poor white neighborhoods per ratio of the race statistics in America. And with that in mind, you have to start thinking about, well, what happens when you have poverty? Where are the highest levels of crime? Poor neighborhoods. Whether they're black or they're white or Hispanic, it doesn't matter. But crime crime breeds in poverty. Crime also breeds in poor education. And because we do have, and I do think it's in some ways not necessarily overtly racist, but it is a accidentally racist method by how we fund our public schools based on property taxes. If your property is worth less, then there's less money going to the schools. So these poor neighborhoods that are breeding crime because they're poor are also breeding crime because they have shit education. Okay, so then what happens when you have a high crime rate? Well, that's pretty simple. That breeds fear. Fear leads to stigmas. Fear leads to stigmas and stereotypes, which leads to racism. So I can make the argument that there are people who are racist against black people specifically because there are more poor black neighborhoods than poor white neighborhoods per ratio in America. But I don't think it's as simple as that either, because that would basically infer that every single time somebody gets shot and it's a white officer killing a black civilian, that it's just purely racially motivated. And that also removes the whole part of, well, if it's a high crime rate area, there's going to be a higher police response, which means there's a more likelihood that there's going to be a fatal shooting. So I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think that there is racist stigmas that are bred because of this, and I think that there's also a higher likelihood of it happening. So there, just like that. Basis for why there is the fundamental groundwork of racism in America. The very basic aspect to this. Now, what's unfortunate, though, this creates a powder keg situation that is exacerbated by societal pressures. You see, we live in a very divisive society right now. We live in a society that has these social groups that are rabble-rousers. They're angry, they're young, and they're always college students. Always. I grew up going to high school in Panama, Central America. Only time there was any civil disobedience in that country was when the students, the overprivileged students, which were the highest of class, the highest money-making families in this very impoverished nation, with the most privilege, would riot violently. As Kraut and Tea says in one of his most recent videos, which I'll put a link to in the description, this also goes back to the RAF in Germany and rabble-rousing college students. And that's an extreme example because this type of very liberal, very socially charged, angry college element, that actually led to them bombing people, killing people, abducting and murdering a politician. Now, is that to say I think that these social groups are going to do that? No, and I hope they don't, because that ain't going to help. But that is to say that these types of movements, these types of angry, yelling protesters are not helping the problem. They're making it worse. So here's where we get down to the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And this is where I make the distinction. For somebody who goes out there and they want to voice their rage, they want to express how upset they are at the unjust killing of people by the police, and you go out there and you say, Black Lives Matter, well, I appreciate the sentiment. And that's fine, and that's your right to say it. But for myself, I believe that that's just simply a sentiment, especially depending on where you're protesting. Let's take, for example, the whole Dallas protest. There was no shooting in Dallas prior to that protest. None of the officers in Dallas committed any of those crimes. None. And they didn't even protest at the police headquarters. They didn't protest anywhere necessarily near where it might make an actual visible impact. You want to know where to go protest? Protest the police department that hired the officer that killed the person. This culture of social outrage is, at best, purely virtue signaling, and at worst, it's masturbating about how progressive and how forthright thinking you are. I understand, you're upset, I get that, and I respect your passion and I respect your point of view. But are you helping? Do you think that you're going to tackle racism in America by yelling? Will that help? So what do we do? What do we do? How do we fix this? How do we move forward? It's pretty simple to me. When this type of thing happens, we have to hold the people accountable for what they did. But that's not going to stop it from happening. No matter how many goddamn police officers you get fired, no matter how many cop cars you burn, no matter how loudly you scream, we have nothing to lose but our chains, will that stop racism? And in the worst case scenarios, it'll make it worse. So what's the answer? Easy. Education. Education and understanding. Take a hint from the one janitor in his plea to try and have an understanding. Try and understand that a black person is the same as you, that you're a person, they have feelings. Understand that they have these situations that are making them afraid. But then, do something. Dig into your pockets, pull out some money, find a charity that contributes to low-income schools, after-school programs, or urban renewal projects. Shit, even just cleaning up a fucking park that has a bunch of crackheads in it. Do community cleanups. Work locally. Work in a way to help your neighbors, the people who actually need the help, so that they are not living in a goddamn impoverished hellhole. That's how we fix this. We don't fix this by yelling. We don't fix this by screaming, why isn't this fixed? We fix it by fixing America. All the places where we're black and blue. We're bruised. Wow, I just thought about that. Black and blue. A black and blue bruise. A place where basically you have this powder keg of crime that's really just an unfortunate circumstance of historical poverty and historical racism and their interaction with the police. Black and blue. We have to fix the ways that we are not equal. And we can't just simply give people money and be like, here you go, now you're on the same level playing field. No. It doesn't work that way. Living in a place of poverty teaches you values attributed to living in crime, living in poverty. And just giving people money is not going to fix that. You have to fix it by helping to support the next generation of people. You have to give them books. You got to show them that being in a gang's not a good fucking idea. You gotta educate them and get them ready for college. I'm very, very fortunate, and I feel blessed, even though I'm not really religious at all, that I reached my goal on Patreon of over $100 a month. So I will be doing a 24-hour live stream either next week or the week after that, and all of the proceeds will be going specifically to educational materials for impoverished schools. I haven't figured out which charity yet, but I'm still looking. I'm trying to find one that's not a JIP, you know? Oh yeah, isn't JIP a racial slur? Whatever. Look, I can understand as much as I possibly can. My brother-in-law, who I love very much, he's black. All of my nieces and nephews are biracial, and they're mostly black-looking. I hate the idea that they might have to live in fear because of these racial stigmas that are surrounded simply the byproduct of the melanin in their skin. That's fucked. It's totally fucked. And it's a real fear. Whether that fear is based upon something objective or not doesn't change the fact that it's a real feeling, and it's shared by a lot of people around the world. So let's help. Let's do something. Let's fix it. But for fuck's sake, man, we gotta stop chanting shit and actually do something. I think that's about it for now. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I know I was supposed to be doing nothing but science videos this week, but you know, this came up, and prior to that, I had to do an impromptu live stream about Steve Shives. Then I did my wonderful Patreon hangout. That was a blast, and both those are on my second channel, which there's a link in the description. So between that, I had to take a couple of days break, and then this whole shooting thing happened. I just had to get this out there, but I am still working on more science videos, so they'll be coming soon. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to, you could always give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, all that yada yada jazz. Be sure to check out my Patreon, because it's blowing up, and man, we're having a lot of fun with our live stream hangouts. And I hope that somehow, in the midst of all this chaos, all of this angry rhetoric and fist-shaking rage, we can at least find enough common ground to love one another, even if we don't necessarily like one another, and try and make something of a difference, rather than just fooling ourselves into thinking that our worst behavior is somehow going to fix it for us, you know? I don't know. Food for thought. Bye. We're gonna break out the googs. The Google. That sounded almost racist. The googs.